And it's an adaptive stroke. I haven't heard that.
Yeah. No. Okay, cool. So Luxilon is one of our endorsees that goes through Wilson. Wilson is #1 in tennis, if you haven't heard that. And Nike Foam is clothing. Always plugging on endorsees. All right, so let's talk about grips. Part of the one part of the evaluated component is the online grip exam. What do you guys think about grips? Tennis and grips. Give me some ideas. What's the first thing that pops in your head?
It changed a lot over the last.
They've changed a lot over the years. That's a good one. Yeah.
It's the foundation.
Foundation, good. Like foundation of the stroke, or yeah, definitely. Yeah.
So the first thing I do when someone's never even played tennis before.
They've never.
First thing I talk about is grip.
Talk about grips. First off, interesting. Other ideas.
Each grip has its own shot.
There you go. So different grips have different purposes. That's a good one.
It's
Other
all
ideas?
about preference.
Oh, preference.
They
That's
all
right.
have advantages and disadvantages.
They all have this advantage and disadvantage. Okay, what about your grip, the grip that you use for a stroke, and how is that related to your students? Related, unrelated?
Say that again?
It's related, but they're gonna kinda wanna play how you play.
Okay, so your students might want to do something like you. What up? Any other thoughts? Go ahead.
My upper students are closer to me, but I have a very young program right now,
Yeah.
so they're complete opposite.
Opposite, right?
None of my 8-year-olds are holding the Western.
And why is that? What did Josh say about grips?
It's all preference.
Yep, preference. And then what did Jim say?
Oh, each
The
one has
strengths
its
and
own
weak,
thing.
yeah, strengths and weaknesses. So the correct philosophical answer is that it's true that your students may want to emulate your grip, but philosophically, as teaching pros, our mindset has to be changed. That it is no longer about me and how I play. It's all about who? It's all about who I'm teaching and coaching. Everything's about them. It's not about my satisfaction during the hour or the hour and a half clinic, right? So our mindset switches, and it's tough as young pros come in because they've been successful at it, especially if they played at a high level. So I've been successful doing this, so obviously for success for that, that should look like the way I did it. But that's not the case, especially with grips. All right, now, I will give you that, especially if your student likes, wants to be like you, they're young and you're like a figure that then they probably want to look. My son, who's 26, is a much better tennis player than I am, especially now. But people used to say, oh my God, guy looks just like you on the court. Not looks-wise, but stroke-wise. And how'd that happen? Well, since 2 years old, he's on the ball basket and he's watched me his whole life. It just happened. And I never said, hey, do it this way, do it this way. So they want to emulate, but the right answer philosophically is no longer about how I hold the racket or grip the racket. It's what's best for them, right? That's why there's advantage, disadvantage to each one. Okay, so who teaches red ballers? Yeah, who likes teaching red ballers? That's fun, right? Okay, so let's see. Ginger, you're my red ball student, and Ginger, this is her second lesson. The first lesson we did a lot of athletic skills and movement. We were tossing the ball around, had the racket in the hand for a little bit. It's a short lesson. And then the second, this is her second lesson, and she's actually, maybe her and her partner are tossing the balls and they're trying to hit forehands, right? And Ginger's holding the racket like this, or like this, and maybe like this. This seems to be a common one, right? So, maybe hold your racket like that, Ginger. So I'm coaching now for red ball, and so I go up to Ginger. Hey, Ginger, I think this grip, can I help you with the grip? So what I want you to do is to take your base knuckle and the heel of your hand, and I want you to put it on bevel. What's Ginger doing right now?
Huh?
Yeah, she's 6.
Yeah.
She's either starting to cry if it's me, like, oh, this ugly guy, or she's like, yeah. All right, so we have this system, and that's part of the test based on, we're gonna go over that. But how do you show grips most of the time? I mean, I just gave it away. How do you, you show them. Usually you show them, especially the less the knowledge, the less technical terms you use. Now, if you have a Division I player, right, and he's playing on a really slow surface, and he's having trouble with really high, heavy balls, and he's kind of stuck on sort of an Eastern and he's wondering about, then you might say, hey, let's move your grip a little toward more semi-Western and just try out those high balls like that, you know, because they know what that means. And they might say, hey, move your base knuckle over more toward the fourth bevel. Of course, they might understand it, but usually, in my experience, it's all about showing them, right? Just showing them a grip, say, hey, let's try this grip. And how do you do it? Well, maybe you shake your hands, and we'll do that a little bit. Okay, but let's first talk about the system. So here's the USPT. It's fallible, it's not perfect, as most systems are. They have some holes in them, but this is, at least it's something. So this is the base knuckle of your pointer finger, of your dominant hand, and the heel of your hand. So those two are our reference points, and they make a diagonal line, okay? And then the racket is beveled. So each of these flat parts of the racket we call bevels. Some people call them panels, and doesn't matter. And the top one is 1. And then moving 2 clockwise is 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. All right, if you're lefty, you just go the other way, counterclockwise. So if the theory says if you put your base knuckle and your heel of your hand on any given bevel, the same one, it creates a grip, right? Should we follow that theory? Then that's the way the test is going to be on pictures. Who's taking an online grip test? Anyone? 2? All right. 3? Oh, yeah, you took it. All right. So some of the questions will say your base knuckle, your heel of hands on bevel 3, and then it'll give you this 4 multiple choice, select the grip. So let's stand up, push your chairs in, let's get some interaction here, grab your rackets. Have some fun, get a partner. Are we even? 2, 4, 6. So Ginger, you have to sit this one out.
I'll sit it out.
All right, so let's go with, we'll go with the little system here. Starting with Dylan, name a grip.
Let's go Eastern.
One more word on that.
Forehand or backhand?
Oh, forehand.
Oh, you gave
Sorry.
it away. All right. All right, Eastern forehand. So base knuckle, heel of hand on which bevel?
3.
3, good. So count 1, 2, 3, stick it right on there. Good. Okay, now who's got a way? We'll stick with Dylan. Do you have a way, if not someone else, of demonstrating this grip? Anyone? You have one? Anyone? Yes? Jim?
Shake hands.
Shake hands. It's the shake hands grip, at least in America. So it's the only, Eastern forehand is the only grip where the palm of the hand is synonymous with the racket face. So if you go like this, you go like that, or you just stick your racket out and shake hands, we call that the shake hands grip. Now, oddly enough, in England and Australia, the two predominantly English-speaking countries, they call the shake hands the continental grip. So it can, you know, I don't know, maybe they go to church and shake hands with old ladies like that, or old gentlemen. I don't shake a hand like that, but they do. So, shake hands grip or put your hand there. Okay, good. All right, name a grip.
Let's go Eastern backhand.
Eastern backhand. All right, so where do you put your base knuckle and heel hand? Bevel 1, everybody do that? Bevel 1, there we go. So who's got a way to demonstrate the Eastern backhand grip? Yeah.
Drawing a sword.
Excellent. All right, so go like this, ready position. Put your racket in your non-dominant hand, hold it on the throat, and put it like that so the butt cap's sticking forward in your ready position. And then you just take your dominant hand and stick it right over the top. Almost every time they'll put it right on Eastern backhand. Right, so it's a cool way to demonstrate it. And who do you think likes this idea, student-wise? Kids, especially little boys. They think, oh my gosh, it's a sword. And so here's one thing that I found is that when you're dealing with red ballers and you move into sort of the GPS or stroke production, you're trying to, it's just easier to teach them two-handed backhands. But also I think it's a little lazy because some kids have natural one-handed backhands. You show somebody this and they do this sort of thing, they might have right off the bat, and I've seen it, red ballers that have right off the bat a real natural one hand. Just like you see a lot of kids like, wow, they make good contact, their forehand looks good early on, and their third lesson they look like, or maybe they're sisters and brothers blood. All right, so we don't want to just put everybody in a two-handed group because it's easy. At least let them experiment. There's nothing wrong with hitting a bunch of one-handers and then going to two hands. Now, experientially, most kids that I've worked with that have a one-hander started with two. And as they matured or something, they experiment a little bit with one and eventually go to one. So I'm not saying they'll never end up with a one-hander, but we don't have to. Remember, it's not about you. I have a one-hander, but most people my age and that look like me have a one-hander. That's what everybody hit back then. But now most people have a two-hander. It's not about me, it's about what's best for them. Right, so let them try it. Don't just say, well, let's just all do two hands. Okay, Eastern backhand. Josh, name a grip. We did Eastern forehand, Eastern backhand.
Let's go Western forehand.
Western forehand, what bevel? Base knuckle, heel, or hand?
I always call it palm, so it's 3, 4, 5.
5, there you go. So it's all the way at the bottom there, Western forehand. Whoever teaches this, actually teaches, hey, let me teach you a Western forehand. Has anybody ever done that? No, I have, in my long career, I've never actually taught it. However, I've definitely coached it. Why? Because players at higher levels, some of them end up in this grip, and it's appropriate for them, and so I've had to coach it, which is no
It's
problem.
happening a lot less now that we went to Quick Start Ball Shop.
Yeah, it has happened a lot less.
I mean, you didn't
Yeah.
have to do it as much.
You don't have to do it near as much,
Yeah, so
because the ball's not so
10
hot.
years ago. it's not
Yeah.
like I always was.
What were you gonna say, Josh?
No, I've taught it.
Oh, yeah? You actually showed someone how to do it and say, let's do
Yeah,
it
but
like
this is a grown man that's about 95.
Huh?
You know, he got these high balls and he didn't know what to do with them. So I'm like, look, just
Good, so the task, someone said that, right? The task was high balls, and the student didn't know how to do it, so he switched them over to a more Western of a grip. Come on in, Ramona. Come on, in.
Come on.
Hello, everyone.
That's Ramona. Yes, Cedric.
What grip is the farthest you can extend your arm in the front? What's the farthest?
I don't know. What do you think?
That's one of the best questions.
It is?
Yeah.
I don't know, I don't remember.
It would be that, it would be that.
Yeah.
I mean, Thunder does it pretty far with.
Western?
Yeah, no, but they would say, they would say, what is the furthest contact point out in front?
Right.
And it would be a full Western grip would be the furthest in front of you.
Because if the further your hand goes toward continental, theoretically, the contact point could back up. And that's why continental would be a later contact.
It would be like, yeah, full
Yeah.
Western grip would be the
Yeah.
furthest forward contact point.
Thank you.
But I don't think that's on the wrist test anymore. But maybe, I don't remember.
I didn't see that one.
Yeah.
It might have been back then. Okay, so Western, full Western grip, and I don't even know how to demonstrate it except for, oh, I know. Someone said, pretend there's a ball on a tee, like a little baseball, and you have to hit it with this thing. You usually hold it like a Western, so I guess you could demonstrate it like that. All right, name a grip, Cedric. We have Eastern backhand, Eastern forehand, Eastern backhand, semi-Western forehand. What do you got left?
Western.
Oh, full Western forehand, you said.
Semi-
Semi-Western forehand. Okay, what bevel is that on?
Semi-Western?
4.
Oh, you need a racket, man. Sorry, I didn't bring an extra. Yeah, so bevel 4, 1, 2, 3, 4.
This is backhand. This is continental. This is Eastern. So semi-Western is
Yep.
1, 2, 3, 4.
4, exactly right. Okay, does anybody have a way they would show this to a student? Go ahead.
Panhandle.
Yeah, that's right, just pick it up like that. Pick it up the ground, off the table, they usually grab it, like that.
I think it's the easy one for kids, is you pick it like this,
Yeah.
people already switching, you know?
Yeah.
The kids, you put it on the ground and do it like
Put it on the
this.
ground, pick it up, will be semi-Western. Put it on the ground. Someone says shovel it, hold the pizza ovens under there.
So we do it like this, so it can be like, it's like,
Okay,
okay,
slide back. Yeah.
You kind of have to go like there and under to actually get semi-Western.
Yeah, those
I mean, I actually
So
want
there's-
to show it
there's
the other
50
way, because
bars.
then it gives them kind of half of between some of
Oh,
them.
yeah.
Like if they pinched it between that and their thumb, and then pick it up, it almost gives you halfway between Eastern semi.
Right.
Yeah,
That's right.
That's
And so that's what I always say,
That's
one of
what I showed.
One of the flaws of the system is that it doesn't cover the tweener grips.
Yeah.
So there's actually a little between, the Eastern on, especially on head rackets, the bevel 3 and 7 are a lot, really elongated. It's more rectangular, so there's a lot of movement in there, so you can go one toward the other. Okay, did we cover all of them?
No.
What else we got?
That's the important one.
Which is?
Continental.
Continental, why do you think it's the most important? I like that. Okay, what bevel?
That would be, he's gonna help me.
Yeah, good job, Cuba. All right, 2 and 2. So continental grip. Anybody have a way of demonstrating it?
the Australian and English handshake.
There you go. Oh, down on down, we shake hands.
Feel
Hammer,
very-
right?
Oh,
It's
yeah,
very
hammer.
typical. Hammer.
Hammer.
15 years ago, it's called the hammer grip.
Yeah, we still call it the hammer grip. So, yeah, some people just put it like that, shows that, and just your hand like that, stick it on top, usually put a continental. I've seen say tap your back, it's kinda hard to tap your back with any other grip, tap it vertically. Pretend you're tapping a nail into the, tacking the wall or something, you almost always hold it with hand, with a.
It always seemed like when I said hammer, have the kids put their hand down where it seems right, except for our ruling of how you say it goes in your palm.
Uh-huh.
And they end up having this kind of, like they do their hammer there, whereas if you tell them to turn their hand just here and then put it down, it almost gives it that.
The angle,
proper
right?
angle.
Yeah, I always tell the kids no fat hands. I want to
Yeah.
see
Yeah,
the
yeah.
hand, because I get that a lot where
Where they
it's a
have
continental,
that
but it
fist.
looks like that. I'm
Yeah.
like, they lose all their racket control.
So that's another.
It's gotta have a V on
Yeah.
it.
We're covering these fallacies of the system as we go, which doesn't usually happen. Another fallacy or problem, challenge with this system is it doesn't address the angle of the hand. So you can actually put your base knuckle and heel of hand on two, and that is not a continental grip. I don't know what that is.
Just
But
puts it so much in your palm.
but it is. I put it on there. I got the right on there. But I just
It's like,
so that doesn't address that height. Don't. What did you say it was?
I call it a fat hand.
Yeah, don't
Circle
fat
hands
hand,
or
like
fat hands.
spread hands. So
Long
it's like-
hands.
Yeah, long hands.
The little
Okay.
kids like it.
Good. Any other ones? We got any left? Do we have any left?
Two-handed back.
I think that meant.
Do we have any left? You're.
I'm sorry, two-handed backhand?
There you go. Oh, she give it all the hands. Okay.
I'm
She's
sorry.
Louise. All right. So two-handed backhand. Give us one and two-handed.
Two-handed. Let's do continental bevel on one, and then
Okay.
backhand would be, I don't know. Is that 5 or 6?
This one right here. This 5 is down here.
5.
7 is the flat one.
7.
Yeah. And so that's why he's struggling. Because why? What's the deal with the two-hander?
It's on the opposite side, the left.
One, the left hand's on the, there's more bevels. I mean, a higher number of bevels. What else? Is there only one two-handed backhand?
No.
There's a whole bunch of them, right? So basically, what are some of the common ones? You named one, continental on the dominant, which would be 2 and 2, and then eastern on the non-dominant, just 7. What are some other common ones? Eastern, so 3 and 3, eastern forehand, and then 7 and 7 on the backhand.
Is it? Yes.
What's that?
Is it a normal way to teach it?
Eastern? Yeah, it used to be way more common in the 80s, the women on tour, right, way before you. All the ladies on tour used Eastern, not all, but a bunch,
They
because,
definitely had a big bow.
yeah, and they would just stick this one on and do like a,
So
so,
return to serves.
Yeah.
If you can't get it to continental, you're
Yeah.
playing Eastern.
yeah, you just boink,
Yeah,
block.
to your left.
That's not how it's.
No, not usually, but.
But so,
It does exist.
what are some other ones, other two-hander ones?
Well, you have like the 2 and the 8, or the 2 and the 6.
Okay, so continental again on this one,
Yeah.
and then 6 is sort of a semi-western, right?
The
All
dollar.
right, so it's more, so here's what I think about the two-hander, is for coaching, is focus on where their dominant hand is, because that'll be where you need to teach the stroke. So what do I mean by that? If they have, this is actually a popular grip now, an Eastern backhand grip on the dominant, and then either an Eastern forehand or a 6. So it's a really strong right-handed grip. So what is this more like?
A one-handed back.
It's more generated from the right shoulder, like a one-hander, and so your focus should be on the turn, the preparation, almost like a one-hander, because it's a very strong grip. And then the left hand is a more along for the ride, and to add some acceleration or flip at the end. Now, if it's a weak grip, which we used to see a lot more of, and still do, like a continental or Eastern forehand, and a strong grip on the lefty, now it becomes more like what? Left-hand forehand, so the focus is on the preparation with the outside shoulder, and this is along for the ride to add some of the push-pull instead of, and this is moved like a left-hand forehand. So, that's it, that is, what?
All these different options, man.
Yeah, there's a lot of options for
That's
two-handed,
why
yeah.
this game is beautiful.
Yeah, it is.
You talked about on bevel 1, it's obviously predominantly right, but you didn't go over 2. Just your
Two.
personal opinion, what would you value then? Would you say that's more of a left-handed forehand or a one-handed
I mean,
backhand?
that's kinda close. So this is a continental grip, which is the most neutral of grips,
And
right?
then 7.
That's why it's called continental. And then 7 is a little stronger than neutral, so then I'm saying, well, if the dominant hand is on neutral and the non-dominant hand is on a little stronger than neutral, 7 is probably more dominated by the left. But then again, it's like Josh said, it's beautiful because it's so different. And I think our role as professionals and teachers and coaches is to, you know, connect with our students, like even Andre was saying yesterday, sort of the needs that did anybody hear Andre yesterday? The needs that Cahill brought to him after Brad in terms of coaching was Cahill was able to see like the importance of what's going on outside of his tennis world and connected on that level and coached him on that level. While when Brad was in there, it was all about the tennis. And so being able to figure out, okay, you know, maybe you got, anybody remember Fabrice Latour was at Gemini?
Yeah.
All right.
Magician.
Yeah, of course you probably remember. So this guy, you know, I played the guy. The guy, I don't know where his brain went. It was definitely all, what's the artsy brain, right brain? It's definitely so right brain. This guy's 2 hands on both sides. But sometimes he'd hit it like this.
That's what
And sometimes he'd hit it like this. I mean, he'd have 2 hands, but you never know which one. Sometimes he'd slice it like this, and then the next one he'd switch his hand like this and hit with like a lefty forehand and 2 hands topspin. I mean, it was so all over the place. What if his coach had said, no, excuse me, you know, you're gonna do this and this and this, right? So thankfully, someone might have done that and he overrode it, but just the creativity, say like, this is a really creative guy that's got 2 hands and weird stuff. And he probably had a ton of coaching. No one gets that good without coaching. So great on them for allowing him to do that, to be that free. Now, there are parameters.
What about 2 forehands?
2 forehands, I've seen it. It didn't work so good for Luke Jensen, was the guy I think of the most. So when he played juniors, he's about my age. You ever heard of him? Luke and Murphy Jensen? The Jensen brothers won.
Huge.
They won the French Open doubles as brothers. And now they're still in tennis. They're involved in World Team Tennis. And Luke's done quite a bit of commentating. I
Yeah,
think,
he was on Tennis Channel
for a while, yeah. And now he actually coaches college tennis. But when he was in juniors, he played 2 forehands, and he served ambidextrous. So he's super weird to play against. So he'd line up on the do side, and then he'd crack a flat one and be out, and then he'd switch to lefty and kick his second one. So you're like, okay, what do I do? Where's the ball? You know? So he played 2 forehands, but then when he got to pros, I think it was just too heavy of a ball. And so he switched to playing lefty. He did a 2-handed backhand, 1-handed forehand, but he still served both sides, left and right. So I don't know when the day is gonna come, because you'd think that that'd be so much advantage if you got competent at this, but I think it must have to do
Well,
something
there
with
was
the
that guy out
switch.
there playing the other night with the 2-hand
Brian
racket.
Tapstone, he's a legend in this town.
Yeah.
Okay, so good job on the grips and the demonstration and the sort of the ideas about it. Any questions about that? Let's just talk specifically about the exam.
But I think we're missing a grip, no?
We didn't do a semi-western backhand.
Yeah, so that's not on the exam. That's a great point. So the Eastern backhand has for years been pretty much the only one-handed, but as technology and the balls have gotten heavier, we've seen younger pros and even
Adjusting hand.
yeah, beyond the Eastern backhand, so bevel 7, 8. So we're calling it like semi-Western backhand. I mean, there's really no official name for it, but it's like a really strong, and you know what? Yeah. But that's not on the test, it's the only one we have. So let's talk specifically about the test.
Real quick.
Go ahead.
Written test or stroke test during our lesson? Are you talking all the grips that we cover? Is this
Yeah, we're only talking about grip test right now.
Yeah, okay, just for the online one.
Yeah, it's only the only test for grips is online. So there's 2 parts to it. One is identify the grip. So it's all multiple choice. 4 answers, A, B, C, D, and it'll be like a question will be like your base knuckle and your heel of hand are on bevel 4. Identify the grip, and then you choose you choose.
Semi-Western.
Semi-Western, all right. And then the other ones, they'll have a couple pictures, and they'll have like a picture of a Continental grip or something, and it'll say identify the grip. And then you have to look at it, and it has a, yep, and it'll just say which grip is this showing? Continental, Eastern forehand, two-handed backhand, and full Western forehand. So they're pretty clear. It won't show a picture of a semi-Western forehand and have the option semi-Western forehand and Western forehand, because that would be hard to see in a picture. But there are a few pictures like that. All right, and then the next part of the exam, which we'll talk about now, we can actually sit down if you're tired. You can sit or stand. The next part is strengths and weaknesses, advantages and disadvantages. So the Eastern grips, the Eastern forehand and the Eastern backhand have the same, in our manual for the test, the same advantages and disadvantages. All right, all this stuff is in your PTCA review book that Jim has printed there and that has been PDF to you. So you can either print it out or just use it on a handheld. So what are let's talk about the Eastern grips. Advantages of the Eastern grips. Go.
Flexibility. Spin.
What's that?
Spin.
Which kind?
Top spin.
Okay, a little bit top spin, good. What?
Flat shots, high flat
Flat-
shots.
Okay, none of those have been, they may be right, but none of them are on the test. Power, easy to generate power is one of them.
Two-way shot.
Waist high contact, so all of the advantages are for the testing purposes, talk about contact points. So the advantages of the Eastern strokes is waist high contact. What else?
Easier to hit.
Top spin, easy. It's easy for beginners. Why? The hand and the racket are synonymous. So a lot of people find it very intuitive to hit it with an Eastern grip. So those are some advantages. What else? Any other ones on there? Okay, disadvantages of the Eastern grips.
So, backspin.
Underspin, good. Backspin, that's a disadvantage. Hard to hit underspin. What else?
High balls.
High balls. Any other disadvantage? So,
Requiring a grip change. It says
grip
requiring
change. So
change.
on every stroke, one of the disadvantages that you can write for the test is that it requires a grip change, except one of the strokes, which is Continental, and that is listed as an advantage. It requires no grip change. So there you go. You have about 6 answers just by knowing no grip change for Continental and grip change for every other one. All right, so let's talk about Continental. What are some advantages of Continental? So no grip change, that's one. What else? Continental grip. Just visualize. Someone
Good
using
for
Continental.
underspin.
Underspin. What else?
Good
Good for
volleys.
low
Volleys. Low volleys. Good.
Serve.
Serve. Yeah. Overhead. Serve and volley.
That's nice.
Slice. Good. So just think about the grip, and you can probably spit out the advantage. Okay. What are some disadvantages of Continental grip?
Hard to generate top spin.
React top
Top spin.
Top spin.
Yep.
Power.
High balls.
Handles the top.
So power.
High ball is top. It should say with top spin
Because you can-
I'm old school, and every high backhand
Yeah.
I hit is with a Continental grip because I slice it. So it should say driving high ball.
Yeah.
Right? But it doesn't. It just says high balls. Okay, so what are the other groups? So the Western and full Western and semi-Western have the same advantages and disadvantages.
Low top spin.
Just a little bit of level of difference. What'd you say?
You can generate low top spin.
Is that advantage or disadvantage?
Advantage.
Okay, let's talk about the advantages of the semi-Western and full Western. Lots of top spins. What else?
No, that's good.
Same.
Okay, correct. Yeah, you're right. What else?
Contact point in front of you.
Okay, early contact. What about the level of contact?
Higher ball.
High, it's easy. It's high contact point. That's an advantage. What else?
It breaks a lot of strings,
Yeah. It's good for Lexington. What else? Think about
Power.
power. It's good for power.
I think that you can generate your racket speed because you can use your.
That's true, but it's not on the test. But there's a bunch of answers that aren't on the test. But I'm just trying to.
On the test.
Oh no! Hey, let me discuss it. You'll read it off.
Yes,
Okay,
read
go
it
ahead and
off.
read them off. I don't care.
No, that's what I'm saying.
No, you.
I never got it.
Yeah. Oh.
It says disguise, which seems, I don't understand that exactly.
Disguise, I think, for like passing shots.
Yeah.
So you could disguise maybe
Yeah,
an angle.
disguise and passing
or,
shots.
yeah, disguise and passing shots.
Okay.
Topspin lobs.
Yeah,
Those
yeah.
kind of disguise type shots. You don't know what's coming. Okay,
But that's going from the topspin, because if you generate more topspin, you
Yeah.
have more possibilities.
right, so that's a good advantage of it, topspin and disguise, they kind of together. Angles, I think, is on there, isn't it?
Well, the 5 that it says for semi-western forehand is topspin, high balls, disguise, passing shots, and power.
Good.
And what's this?
Right, and those, power. So it's harder to, it's saying it's more of an advantage of semi-western or western for power than, say, a continental, right? Continental has way less margin for error.
Either extreme.
Yeah, either extreme.
But it depends power to hit the ball in the court, within the end. If you go, just see.
Well, semi-western and western have the same advantages and disadvantages. They're just two more extreme. So what, do we already do disadvantages of the western grips?
No.
Wait, what's one big disadvantage?
Can't hit low balls.
Low balls, good.
Tough to slice.
Tough to slice.
Can't
What's
see
the
grip
big
change.
one? Yeah.
Grip change,
There you
yeah,
go.
grip change is a big one. And volleys, things on there.
Yeah,
Oh.
can't serve, yeah.
And serve, which is also a misnomer, because all the rec players I teach start with this grip.
They also have this good backhand flight.
It's just a bad grip, but that's the one they use.
They have also their own continental.
Yeah, and it's also a misnomer that continental is the only volley grip. It's just not, I mean, in today's game with so much power and, you know, the top players are so close to the net. That, you know, they're continental, yes, but when it's coming at their nose at 100 miles an hour, you know, they're like semi-western, full western, you know. See, D1 players are knocking off winners all over the place. They start with continental, but it's just whatever the task requires. So that's a good place to start with grips. What is the task? All right, what's the task? So when my development kids, we would do, you know, the kids that are playing tournaments now, 12 and 13, we would do once a week, 10 minutes, up and down the river or king of the court, something competitive, one service box. And I'd say, get the balls out there. All right, Cedric, you can go play Josh on court, whatever. And here are the parameters. Here are the controls. Here are the rules, whatever you want to call them. We'll play for time. Winners move up, not winners move down. You used to be able to say losers. And you can only hit slice, only underspin. Okay, ready to go. The kids start playing. What grip are they using? I don't know. Now they may start with their forehand grip, but pretty soon they figure out that's not working. So I didn't even have to talk about grips or teach a grip or show a grip. Just say give them a task that requires something they can't use the grip that they're comfortable grip baseline in, and they start using continental, right? So the task. So same thing. Have a 3-5 man. Gary Wong was his name. He wants to be on the 4-0 team, and he's a pretty good volleyer. He likes to play doubles, and he gets really close to the net, right? And he's real aggressive, and he just pounds the ball with like a semi-western, and then this is his volley, right? So he's going to take a series of lessons to move up a level, right? So I say, good diagnosis as a good coach. You know what? You need a good volley grip so you can play 4-0, because I know the 4-0 level, they're able to dip shots at their feet on, especially when they're transitioning in, right? So I put them up at the net, and I start feeding them balls. First I show them the continental grip. So let's do this little hammer thing, whatever. And I'm getting him in the ready position. I back him up from the net a little bit, feed him the ball. What does he do with his first volley? Yeah, wherever it goes, who knows? Strings are open, it goes over the side fits. What does he do with the second volley? Same thing. The third volley, what does he do? He moves back up to the net, pounds it.
Yeah.
And then, so what does he think? Well, stupid coach. This works way better than what he showed me. So what do I have to do?
Show me, and put him where you're not gonna.
Just put it in
Right? And do what with the ball?
Low.
You gotta hit it low. I gotta hit the reason he can't move to 4-0 with his volley is because he's never had to hit the low ball. So I gotta back him up and say, look, at the next level, you're gonna get these balls. Now try it. I don't even have to take it. Just now try your volley. He's like, oh, this ain't working at all. Right? So I have to give a task appropriate for the grip. And that's how we have to coach. I see so many lessons. People do something and they don't have success with it, they don't stick with it. They just say, oh, that's good, that's good. I'm like, what? You just diagnose something, but you're not sticking with that.
Learn by experience.
Yeah, learn by experience.
Yeah.
Give them the right ball, right? Show them the low ball so they can hit it with the bad grip. You don't have to write, you have to use your words. So you say, okay, let's work on this volley. Would you agree that when you watch higher level players, they have to hit a lot of volleys from the service line area as they're moving forward. Yeah, I see that all the time. Okay, you stand there and let's work on the next one, just feed them low balls. And then you're like, he'll probably ask you, well, how come I can't hit these up? Why does it feel so weird? And you say, well, let's talk. So you could do reverse. You could just let them learn experientially. Or you could teach them and then give them something appropriate. It doesn't matter. But you need to give them something. The task has to be appropriate for the grip. Okay, enough on grips. Advantages and disadvantages, and then also identification. Cool? This is online. Who's responsible for doing this? Yeah, you guys gotta find it. So if it was in your initial email that says, welcome to the SBTA, receive this, blah, blah, blah. You click on this test for, click on here for your online group test. Okay, let me start that. Now the other online test is the written test, and we'll just talk briefly about that because, well, I'll just tell you what I think about it, which isn't that much. It's 80 questions. It's multiple choice. There's always A, B, C, and D. And
Look out for the italicized words. It's like some of the questions have like, this will not, and that's in italics. Look for that. Just make sure you're reading the question correctly, because that will help you. They're not trying to trick you, but you have to really read the question.
You always have one answer, or could also be two answers.
How many times we can do the test?
okay, there's always one answer, but it might say,
A and D or something.
one of the answers might say both A and D, but that would be answer. Right, but, and your question is, you can take it, if you don't pass it, you have to contact membership so they can reset it, because it goes through a LMS, and there's a feed for it. All right, so you're gonna pass it on the first time, I'll tell you how to do it. Study your manual, and know where all the sections are. There's sections on playing skills. For example, playing skills would be, you're playing doubles, your partner moves in front of you to hit a volley. This term is called A, ball hog, B, poach, C, whatever, and then you're like, okay, that term is called poach, right? So that's then they have questions on 10 and under tennis. How, what racket size is appropriate for red ball? And they'll give full-size racket or 27-inch, 26, 21 to 23. So study those. And what courts are appropriate? What ball is used for the 36-foot court? Red ball. All right. So those kind of questions. Then it has questions on
Stringing with rackets.
racket technology. So it's 15, and you may be able to answer this. It's always, I've asked this question literally for 2 years in this scenario, and I've never got the answer, and I don't want to look it up because I kept telling myself, I'm going to keep asking the question in the PTA, someone's going to know. Now we got the guy. If he doesn't know, I'm giving up on it. Okay, so one of the questions on the test is about the gauges of the string. So a 17 gauge is thicker or thinner than a 15 gauge.
Thinner.
Yeah, so then it'll be like,
Yeah, that's complicated for me, because in Europe you don't use gauges, so it's 125 or 130 or.
Oh, you guys go.
There's like one.
but here's my question, So the gauge is an actual measurement, right? So is 17 is a higher number than 15. So why is it a thinner string? Isn't it measuring a diameter? Right? It would be,
How many strings you have?
That's a classification.
Yeah,
That's just always been like that way for a wire, outside of stringing maybe, I don't know.
so it's not a measurement like a grip size 4.5, that's actual inches. 4.5
This manufacturer could say
His is.
that
His is a measurement.
a 1.3 millimeter is 17 gauge, but I could go to another manufacturer like Vocal, and they'll say, well, no.
That's our 17 light.
Exactly, that's an L.
Well, you guys are complicating my question. Why is 17 gauge?
No, I understand what you're saying. Right?
Is it not a measurement?
That's like an American standard that they use for something else.
So it's
that
not
was
an actual
outside,
measurement.
I think it's like for wire and stuff.
I use in Europe is at the 1.10,
Yeah.
1.20, 1.25. That's exactly the diameter. That's
There's
how
So 1.10
is the thickness of the string. That's
And
if
it's
you measure it.
thinner.
So it's like 18
millimeters.
Yeah,
is thinner than the 1.25.
absolutely. That's
Yeah.
the
So,
thickness.
yeah,
That's
so,
the actual.
so
but
gauge
the
is,
measures are going
well, that's my
out.
question. Gauge is not a measurement.
No.
Okay.
It is a measurement, but
It is a
It just
measurement.
goes the opposite way of what's intuitive.
What, I don't, for me,
I don't think
if
it's
I'm coming to
measurement.
US, I'm like, why do you have
You
this
can't
gauge
measure
stuff?
backwards.
No,
Why do you have this
But I
gauge
think you
stuff?
have to go back
Well,
to
it's
the
wire
wire
universal.
universal also is in wire.
Is it backwards in wires too?
No,
It's
no,
like
so-
a 17 gauge wire, like a 2 gauge wire.
Yeah, if you go by wire
So I
strippers,
can go on YouTube and
Yeah,
watch
wire
it.
if you buy wire strippers that are all labeled,
I don't use that, so-
it's that way.
Yeah.
You know, so it's just gonna take the coating off of, yeah.
Okay.
So it's weird. It
I'm
makes no
still
sense.
thoroughly confused,
Yeah.
but I'm considering dropping this question from now on.
No.
Anyway, so, like, you want me to change the way America
Yeah.
does the
No.
gauges and make it
No,
European?
we
We,
should have-
we tried that with kilometers back in, we tried to go to kilometers, you guys didn't know that?
No.
There's a 3-year period where the government says, we're moving to kilometers. So all you get these old school cars that has kilometers big and MPH is second, and they did, wow.
This is one of the difficulties for me. If I'm traveling around the world, I need to know all this like feet and everything.
Yeah, pain in the neck, huh? No universal system.
But there's some conversion tables that's pretty easy then.
I still don't know if gauge is a measurement, it doesn't make sense. Alright, so anyways, then back to the written test. There's other categories are, that was playing, rackets, yeah, some NCRP questions. So it'll describe a player and it'll say, you know, this player is a 2.5 player. Alright, so it'll give the descriptions right out of the NCRP. So here's my suggestion on that, like Ginger was saying, read all the questions, you have 2 hours. Oh, here's one thing. Some of the complaints I get is I ran out of time. Because it's not, the test doesn't have a timer on it like a lot of online tests does. So you gotta put your phone there and time it yourself. 2 hours is plenty of time. If English is your second language, then it becomes a little more challenging just because it's attendance terminology. So manage your time, but read all 4 questions before you answer it, and there's always one really bad answer that's obviously wrong. So just eliminate, then pick between those 3. And then just make a note of the ones you want to go back to when you have time.
That's what I was gonna ask.
You can go back.
The only problem is that you can only click the back button. You can't just.
Yeah, you can
can't
go
to
back.
question.
Yeah,
You
you
have to
gotta
go
go
back.
You can't go back to number 1 from 80.
So don't skip number 1.
Yeah.
But you only need a 75%, so
Yeah.
it's best to almost just guess and move on.
Yeah, and then the other thing is, you can use your resources. So you can print this out, and you can tab it, like here's the 10 and under section, here's the court maintenance, so you can flip to it quickly. Or you can just use Control F on your computer, have 2 computers, or your handheld, right? Now, when I took the test, that was cheating, but now, today's, it's called collaborative learning. That's how you can do it. It's not what you know, it's how fast can you find it?
How fast can you find it?
And that's the way people learn now. It's like, so you just use your resources, all right? Now, do I think as a tennis pro, it's nice to have knowledge for your students and your club members that's in your head that you can, yeah, absolutely, value added. They can ask you, you know, who the 4 musketeers were, you know, like that was on our test back in the day. It had like all these history questions. Or what are the 4 major tournaments? I mean, tennis pros should know that stuff. But to pass the test, you can use your resources. And nowadays, anybody can figure out what the 4 major tournaments are by just asking their phone, you know.
Yeah,
So-
back in the day, we had like essay answers, you guys, and we had to do it raw, we had to, I mean, ours was like 3 hours. Did you do that?
Yeah,
Yeah.
You had to write a lesson plan, 4-week lesson plan. You have beginner students, no, anyways,
Yeah.
that was it. Everybody says, oh, I walked uphill both ways to school in the snow. Okay, so any questions about the written test? All right, so this is, those are all the online things. Now, who's responsible for completing the written test? Yeah, you are. So all these things you gotta do. Now, you literally have 2 years that you stay in the database until you complete everything. Here's my coaching for you. Set a time frame, no more than like 14 days from tomorrow, so that everything's fresh in your head and you're still like in this moment of USPTA certification. Because if you put it off beyond that, it goes like everything else. You just kick it down the road and then you just keep kicking it down the road. All right. So I just took I had to audit a course called USTA High Performance. It's a 5-day course. And I was just auditing it to see where it fits into our new certification pathway. But I wanted to complete all the things like all the other young coaches. And I didn't set a goal, and I've kicked it down the road now 2 months. I haven't done it. And I'm thinking, probably ever gonna do it. I don't have to do it, you have to do it, at least you have some motivation. But I wanted to do it, I just didn't set the, so that's my coaching, get it done, get the online stuff done, get it done tonight, do at least some of it. You can always go back to these and mark up, I'm gonna do 2 of them tomorrow, 2 of them, and do the safe play, that doesn't take long. And then the written and grips, you do the grips now, just based on our conversation, you won't have to look at your resources. It'll be just what we just talked about. Okay, any questions? Keep moving. So here's the main thing we're gonna talk about, group lessons, private lessons, all right? We're gonna talk about them a little bit of philosophically, and then we're gonna get into the details. Now, at the outset, I wanna tell you that the group and private lessons that you give for your evaluation, Hassan and I are gonna watch you do, they may not look like what you do in your real life, but they have values associated with probably what you either do or should be doing. So for example, what do I mean by that? So for example, we specifically work on introducing yourself and saying 3 things about yourself to your student, or 3 things about you, and then we specifically evaluate if you ask 3 specific tennis questions to your entire group. That's not real world, right? I have on Tuesday when I get back, I have a private lesson with my Mariana. I'm not gonna go up to her, hi Mariana, my name is Sid, I played college tennis, I'm not gonna do that. But the value of that is, do you put your student at ease? Do you have rapport with your student? Does your student relate to you? Those are the values but we have some objective ways to do it. Does that make sense? So, at the end of the lesson, we have a lesson review and homework. You may not do that. You may give a great lesson in your day-to-day life and not have that. But the value is that we say, we want our students to be practicing without us something specific. And that's probably a value you share. So sometimes I get, people, I hear them talk about the test, they're like, oh yeah, that's just goofy, they make you do all this stuff. No, these are real values that we have determined are important for our industry. They're just, it's hard to assign objective ways to look at it, okay? So I'm just putting that out there at the beginning. So we're gonna coach the philosophy of lessons, and then specifically what we're looking for, so there's no surprises, and that's what we'll practice. Cool? All right, what do you guys want to talk about first? Types of lessons? Private lessons, group lessons, all right.
Private.
Good. All right, so I learned later in my career, not through this certification thing, but I learned just experientially that I give better lessons, better private lessons, when I prepare specifically for the different types of lessons I give. So I have 5 personal buckets. This is not in your PTCA, but this is coaching. I say that you need to have, what kind of lessons am I giving so that I can prepare for those differently. So what do you think I mean by that? If I have I have 5 different kind of lessons I give. What does that mean? What?
Level.
Okay, so levels, that's one.
Drill versus rally.
Okay.
Technique lessons.
Technical?
Or I guess you could say skill, and then another one would be form.
Progression.
Yeah.
Progressive lessons. Development, good, that's actually one of the names of mine. So he's already thinking in his mind probably the lessons he kind of gets.
Someone who just wants a workout.
Workout lessons, that's one of mine. That's literally one of I call workout lessons. Some people call them hitting lessons. When my son was playing college tennis, he came home for one summer in Orlando. The whole summer he put on Craigslist, USPTA certified pro, nationally ranked NCAA player, hitting lessons, $30 an hour, 4.40 men and women or higher. He had the greatest practices, and he made a bunch of money. I was like, that was so cool. And he said, yeah, I didn't tell him anything. Sometimes they'd ask, and I just did drills with him, and they want to play points, and he, and then of course he had to find tournaments and all that. But I was like, that was a great idea. Huh?
Technical lessons.
So tactical, good. So that's one of the names. So I'll tell you what. So you guys are all thinking along the same lines. And this here, I'll tell you my 5, and you've already named most of them. So, okay, one of them is the stroke specific lesson. So that's the scenario is Ginger's a member of my club. I'm stringing a racket. Ginger comes in, and I know that she had a match last night. I'm a good tennis director, and she's on the well, she's on the 5-0 team, but I didn't have a 5-0 women's team in my club. So she's on the 3-5 team. Hey Ginger, how'd your match go last night? And she says, oh, the match was good. And you know, I try to ask my personal things. I try to ask 3 questions before I ask which question. Did you win, right? Everybody's first question, did you win? So I always try to ask 3, and then eventually they'll get to that, you know, because I want to me, that's not the biggest value of the match, did you win or lose, but that's what everybody else has. So I said, how'd it go? Did you have fun? I always ask, did you have fun? Because, you know, middle-aged woman, why do you play tennis now? Granted, a lot of them play just to win, but mostly to have fun, it was a good workout, whatever. Anyways, then eventually you get to the point where Ginger may say, you know, coach, my backhand return was terrible for some reason. My backhand return, and I have another league match tomorrow night or Friday night. This is maybe Wednesday. Do you think you have time to squeeze in a lesson before that? And what do I think in my head?
No, I don't.
Yeah, of course, right? Why of course? I think, yeah.
I'm not gonna be able to change it that much in one day, but.
Oh, yeah, no, that's what I think, both
That's
of
what I
those
was
things.
thinking, yeah.
Right, but I definitely think, yeah, she wants a lesson, that's what I do,
Yeah.
all right? But, to Jim's point, that's exactly right. So we get on the court, we have one lesson before her league match, and she wants to work on what? Backhand return. So first of all, I know exactly what we're gonna work on for the bulk of the lesson. If it's a half hour, maybe the entire lesson. If it's an hour, that's a lot to work on.
What does she expect from this?
Yeah, so what does she expect? She has a match the next day. So her expectation is I want to get a little better before my match, so it's not as bad as last one. So my stroke specific lesson is just focus on that stroke in the immediate. So, am I gonna change her grip? Probably not, that'll get worse. I'm gonna try to figure out something to help her, and it's probably more a little confidence, okay? Probably more reps. I'm gonna hit a lot of backhand returns, get some timing, maybe a couple of nuggets, like let's just get our racket back quick, just those little coaching, trying to give her something specific for that lesson for her next match. All right, so that's my stroke specific, you can call it whatever you want. Same scenario, Ginger's 3-5. She wants to be next year, her friends all got bumped up. Oh, tragedy. She wants to be on the 4-0 team and she didn't get bumped up. She comes to me, Coach Sitta, next season, 6 months from now, I want to be on the 4-0 team. Will you help me get there? Absolutely, that's the second thing. Just like Dylan said, yeah, cha-ching, of course. How much money you got, how much time you got? I'm a tennis pro, that's what I do. So now how has it changed? I go on the court with her. What's the preparation different between stroke specific backhand return for a match tomorrow, 6 months to get a whole nother level? See the difference? So those are my called developmental lessons. What's gonna go on now? Okay, lots of stuff. What's one?
I mean, you gotta probably lay out a timeline about where you're gonna start.
Right,
We're
I
gonna
gotta
do this.
plan. I gotta have checkpoints. I gotta have like competencies. What's a 3-5 and what's a 4-0 and how we're gonna get there. So maybe she's got a pancake grip, very similar, right? She wants to be a 4-0. It's not gonna work 4-0. So now we're maybe gonna move toward continental. Is that a one lesson thing? Not unless you're a genius I've never seen, right? This is not a kid, right? This is someone who's been playing for a while. So this is a series of lessons where we're gonna work incrementally on proving lots of stuff from grips. Even it could even be fitness. Because okay, well, you know what, you gotta get a little quicker. So now it's a discussion. How bad do you want us? And I'm thinking how much money you got. But I'm thinking how many lessons can you take? How much can you practice? All these things go into developmental lessons. A lot different than stroke specific. And then the other ones mentioned were workout lessons. So cardio tennis, high intensity drills from a junior program, that's a lot of feeding and getting and moving, a lot of rapid fire, you know, that's a whole different lesson. What doesn't happen in workout lessons?
A lot of technique.
A lot of technique. So it's completely different from the development, right? So I got a plan for those. I'm gonna skip everybody. Okay, and then what were the other ones? Tactical lessons. So I was 20 years at a private club, had a lot of adult teams. When do you think I would give a lot of tactical lessons?
Team practice.
Yeah, right at the start of the season, the USTA season, the new captain, you know, Joey comes up, hey, Coach Sid, I'm the new men's 3-5 captain. Guess what? All right, what? We're gonna win the district this year. Oh, really? How are you gonna do that? We're gonna hire you for 10 lessons. What do I think? Cha-ching. Yeah, I'm always thinking that. Yeah, absolutely. So now it's all about tactics. I got 12 guys out there. We're not gonna work on, a bunch of technique. We're gonna work on, okay, what can you do that's gonna be better than the other guys? Well, how about we poach when you're going to the forehand? We all learn how to poach on every second serve movement to your forehand volley. How about we learn how to lob returns, and we can do that in a group specific tactics. Very different than technique or stroke specific. So work out, what was my fifth one? Oh, how to practice. So these are lessons where I'm sending a junior away, they're going on the circuit or something like that, and I'm like, no, I'm not going with them because I gotta stay at the club. Okay, this is what I want. I do lessons in preparation for how they can practice on their own. And those were the 5 that I did the most. But I found later that I had to prepare differently. You know what I used to do? Most people do this, but I'd show up when I first started. My first lesson at 8 o'clock in the morning or whatever. I'd show up at 5 to 8 and I thought I was prepared. Right? That's not preparation. There's a lot, to be really good, be professional, there's a lot that has to happen before the lesson starts. And if you guys can plan, if you can prepare, even 10%, I always have 10% rule, so you have 60 minutes of an hour-long lesson. So can you give us six minutes that you're not getting paid for? At least most scenarios, they pay you for the hour you're on the court, right? They pay you for the hours that you work in the junior clinic or whatever. They don't pay you for the phone calls, the emails, and the preparation. But I figured if you have some experience, a minimum of 10%. So if you're given 10 lessons, that's an hour of preparation. Because some of them are duplicate preparations, junior program, whatever. That's 6 minutes for 3 days, not 6 minutes for each lesson. And the good ones might even prepare more. And this is considered part of it, like learning, going to conferences. Those are what you value added. So anyways, those are different kind of lessons. And all that saying, what do you care about it? If you don't care about that, hopefully you do, is that tomorrow you're going to have stroke specific lessons. All of your lessons, group and private, are going to be the spur of the moment. This is what you're working on. Okay, and here are your topics. For your private lesson, you can be assigned, and you're going to be assigned right at the time, at the start of the lesson. Forehand ground stroke, backhand ground stroke, forehand volley, backhand volley, serve, or overhead. So you have 6 possible strokes. Now, can you work on backhand slides? Yes, you could. But that would fall under the subject of backhand ground stroke. You'll determine on what you're going to work on with your student. They might ask, I want to work on my volleys. And then the tester will say, would you like to work on your forehand volley or your backhand volley? That's specific of a subject. It's one or the other. Now, for your group lesson, you have the same -1. So group lesson, you can get a forehand ground stroke, backhand ground stroke, a forehand volley, a backhand volley, or an overhead. So in your group lesson, we won't have serve as an option. The reason why is because part of your evaluation is how you feed the ball. And that's a big component of your group lesson, feeding. And it's hard to evaluate your feeding if it's a serve lesson. Because basically, there's not a lot of, so we'll talk about that too. So feeding in your group lesson, how you hand feed, how you use your racket feed, how you manage a live ball scenario, that's all feeding. Feeding is how the ball gets to your student. So that's evaluated during your group lesson, that's why you can't use serve. Now, if Dylan has, he's 9 o'clock, he does his private lesson, and the student that he has picks backhand, then at 11:30 when he comes his turn to do his group lesson, I'll say, hey Dylan, you already did your private lesson, what was it on? He said backhand. Then I'll tell the group, whoever turn it is, I'll say, okay guys, you get to pick one of these subjects, but you can't pick backhand. So you'll have to do more than 1 stroke. All right? Questions about the subject? You got it? Yeah?
So like on a backhand volley, would they only want us to teach, let's say a one-handed backhand volley or a continental grip specifically,
No.
or it doesn't really matter?
It's what works for that lesson for that student.
Okay.
So we don't have a system in the USPTA that says this is how you teach this stroke. We don't have a progression like some organizations do that says this is the progression for serve. All right? We're broad. We embrace we learn from each other. We don't say this is the only way to do it. Now there are parameters, right? There's parameters that the USTA determines through player development that we fit our coaching lessons in. But there's no system. So you do what you do and you bring it to the table in your lessons tomorrow. Now, if your lesson is on forehand volley, it's only 25 minutes. So we want you to stick with one stroke. Don't incorporate a bunch of other strokes. Can you add an approach shot? Sure. Could you add a backhand volley? Sure. But word to the wise. When I see people add other strokes as coaches, and you see your student that's a 3-0 out there and they start doing their approach shot all screwed up, what do you want to do? Start working on the approach shot, and then your lesson gets hijacked. Because remember, it was forehand volley. The only reason you had approach shot was because this was helpful for you to get to what you're working on, your split step, or whatever your primary diagnosis was.
Okay, so we're only focused on one stroke.
One stroke. All right, so we did types of lessons, and then we did. Okay, so let's get to some more of the minutia. The lessons are 25 minutes start to finish. That's why it's one stroke. So really, it's part of a lesson. Who gives 25-minute lessons in your club? I give half-hour lessons. But mostly it's hour lessons, private lessons at least. Group lessons, hour lessons, hour and a half. Junior clinics, 2 hours, But so really, it's part of a lesson. That's why your focus during that 25 minutes in both the group and private is that one stroke. Those topics I gave you. The students that you have, hopefully, are the tennis director here is arranging students that are adult recreational level, somewhere between 3.0, 3.5, and 4.0. So that's our hope. Sometimes the tennis director of whatever club we're doing can't arrange enough students or can't get the time. And then sometimes we even use each other for students. We say, okay, you give a lesson to you, and you be left-handed and act like, play with your non-dominant hand and go that way. So be prepared. One of the I always think that a great attribute of a tennis teaching professional is the ability to be flexible and adaptable. And it's just the nature of our business because we're primarily an outdoor sport and there's weather involved and tournaments have withdrawals and your socials never seem to have the right amount of numbers. You just have to learn to be flexible and adaptable to be successful. And so even in our experience here, it's like, hey, be flexible and adaptable. You thought you were going to have 3 women that are 3.0s, and now you have, 3 of your colleagues taking a lesson from you. That's good because we just practiced it yesterday anyways. We're going to do that today. Okay. So what time is it?
It's like
Anybody need a bathroom break? Keep going?
11.
All right, we'll keep going. Cool. All right, let's walk through the lesson. So, we're gonna do some role playing upstairs and do some peer-to-peer teaching. But you already know the subject of the lesson, the type of student you're gonna have, the time of it. The lesson starts when myself or another tester or evaluator introduces the student, and we'll say something about the USPTA, and we'll say it's a 25-minute lesson. Everything will be real clear and familiar, and we'll practice it upstairs. And then we'll say, okay, take it away, the lesson starts now. And then we'll start a little timer on our iPad, and the 25 minutes starts right when we say that. And the first thing that happens is you introduce yourself to your student or students, and you say 3 things about yourself that's tennis related. Now, all these things we're gonna practice, and there's no reason you can't get all these points. You don't even have to be a tennis pro, right? But the value of these is rapport and put your student at ease. And this is just how we evaluate it. So you say 3 things about yourself that's tennis related. You're trying to let them get a feel. I live in New York and I work with NJTL, and I'm here at the World Conference. And you just 3 things tennis related. Not my dog's name is Lassie and my wife's mad at me. Then kind of honing in on what's going on in tennis. Interesting, you know, probably say I played tennis in Belgium, because they're going, if not, they're going to say, where are you from? I noticed you have a slight accent, right? So you just, what's relevant to your students that they want to know. Then you ask 3 things about them. And you're trying to gain information for your lesson. So what kind of things could you ask them?
What's your favorite shot?
Okay, maybe your favorite shot.
How long do you play tennis?
How long you play tennis? Good. So you're trying to get it at something. Well,
What's your level?
level. So actually, level is something you kind of want to know that are kind of related to. What else?
Have you played tennis before?
Have you played tennis before at all? Good.
Left or right-handed?
Yeah, lefty, righties. You want to know that, especially if you have a group. It's the same stroke. So if you have a backhand and you got 2 lefties, two righties and a lefty, you got to figure out how to do backhands. Yeah.
I don't know if we'll need this for tomorrow, but what shot needs improvement? Well, we know which one we're doing right before.
You
We say,
know
hey,
the
you're gonna
shot.
do it backhand, I'm not gonna ask him, hey, what
Yeah.
shot needs improvement?
Right. But that's a good question.
How
But
many
so, okay, so we
days do they
will
play?
Good. How frequent do they play? That's a
Do
good
they
one.
take lessons often?
Take lessons often, all those are good. So here's my coaching, is to try to get the questions to more closed answers. So it's not sort of a, how do you feel? That's very open, right? It's more specific, how long have you been playing? What level are you at? You don't want them to have to think and then to be open, right? So those type of questions where does that make sense, open and close? Because we're gonna talk a lot about open and close. And there's times to open up the environment and time to close the environment. The initial interview and stuff like that, that's pretty closed environment. And if you're doing a group, typically, if you ask 3 questions, they're kind of listening. And then you start to ask the 3 questions. By the time you get to the 3rd and 4th student, they're already answering. They know it because it's kind of a closed environment. How long you been playing, whatever the 3 questions were, they kind of follow suit. You probably don't want to have 3 questions and then try to have 3 different ones for this student and 3 different, because then your information is kind of weird that you're gathering for yourself. Plus they're not following each other. And this is the time for them you'll have either 3 students or 4 students in the group. For the private, you'll have 1 student. That's the private. Okay, so then you sort of ask those questions, and then the next thing on there, and all this stuff is in your book. If I encourage you to look at it tonight, even after we practice it today. So the next thing is you need to do some kind of warm up. So what's the value of warm up? Why do you think that we incorporate that as all these things have actual value to say this is what's important? Yeah, injury prevention, number 1 thing. So in my world, especially on private lessons, if they're juniors, I say you got to come 15 minutes early, and I've already taught them the warm up. This is your normal warm up, and when they come out, we don't waste any time on the warm up. We just start whatever we're working on. But in this one, you got to do some kind of warm up. All right. My adult drill classes always incorporate a warm up. I don't have them come early because I'm more worried about injury prevention for them. Adult, out of shape, type A men who are very aggressive. They coming straight from work. They want to blow off steam. I want to make sure that they do something appropriate warm up so they don't pop something, right? But private lessons, I trust them. I just assume them warm up. But in our lessons tomorrow, you do some kind of warm up. Now, if you have some of these, hopefully, I haven't talked to the tennis director today. He has people sign up for lessons, and they may be up there for 2 straight hours doing back to back to back. They might be dripping with sweat. You can say to them in your private lesson, hey, Andreas, you know what? I see you're all warmed up, so let's get on to it. Just acknowledge that warm up is important. All right. You can still do it. I would say just do whatever warm up you have planned. Okay, so introduction for your students, say these 3 things about yourself and them, do some kind of warm up. Then the next thing that happens, what do you think the next thing would happen after that?
Well, wrap up.
Watch them. Watch the stroke. So observe and ask questions. So after the warm up, now you're getting on to the lesson.
I have a question. Warm up, you mean like only muscle warm up?
Yeah, some kind of warm up that says I want to help you prevent injury. So if let's say you have a serve lesson, you might do, hey, let's just move our arm around a little bit, or let's throw the ball. You can do any warm you want. If you have a ground stroke lesson, let's shadow a couple swings, move out, side step back. You get them moving. So it's a warm up. So a lot of people, does mini tennis count for a warm-up? Well, if you show that they're warming up and moving, it counts. But a lot of mini tennis is pretty much, this probably isn't warming up. It's warming up your eyes, your hand-eye coordination, but get them moving. So yes, I would say some kind of warm-up where you're not necessarily playing tennis. If you can make it work, doing mini tennis or playing tennis, fine, but it's a warm-up. And then you're gonna watch the stroke. So observe and ask questions. So after the warm-up, the stroke's backhand volley. What do I wanna do with backhand volley before I start to teach it? I wanna observe and ask questions. Specific to back, not questions about who's your favorite player, how often you play, you've already asked those. Specific now about the stroke. So okay guys, I got you four here for a group. You know what, for the first thing I wanna do, I wanna feed you a few balls. You guys line up on the baseline or go blah blah, however you do it, 2 lines or 1 line moving across, or live ball, whatever. Right now, for the next few minutes, I'm just gonna take a look at your forehands, right? And then that's what observing is. So you're trying to figure out by watching, and then you start asking, okay, you know, what's your most common mistake? Do you hit a lot of the net? Do you hit it long? What do you wanna do? Do you wanna hit some power? You're trying to observe, ask questions. So because why? Because now you're trying to come up with your primary diagnosis. And it's a big chunk of points. You're gonna work on one primary thing. Not multiple, group and private, one primary thing. And that's important, and that's a value that we say during the lesson. People don't learn by throwing a bunch of stuff at the wall and hoping something sticks. And to be honest with you, a lot of teaching pros teach that way. The lesson's forehand, and they got a basket, and they're at the service line, they're feeding the ball. Okay, Cedric, oh, get your racket back early. Okay, good. Okay, Cedric, oh, bend your knees. Good. Every ball they're giving a tip. Oh, Cedric, finish up nice and high. Okay, go. Okay, Cedric, you're a little late on that one. What is Cedric thinking? What the hell? Let me shoot myself. This game sucks. You know, but Cedric,
Don't shoot
you know what? What we're gonna work on after I just watched you hit for a few minutes and ask you some questions, sounds like what we can do most for the next few minutes is focus on your whatever, your contact, your follow through, your preparation. And now, okay, you got that, Cedric? We're gonna work on, this is the main thing we're gonna work on. And that's where you do observe, you ask questions, and you're coming up with your primary diagnosis. Question?
They begin to master it.
Excuse me?
They begin to master it. Can we give them a second thing?
Yeah, well, no, you're progressing. So you're gonna, one primary diagnosis.
Okay.
That's it for the whole 20, you only got like 19 minutes total,
So
right? You gotta pick up balls, you gotta do the introduction, go ahead.
if they master it, you know, in that spot that you're putting the ball to, give them a higher ball or a lower ball. Let's see how you can do
Just
it
challenge.
in different.
Progressing.
Same
Yeah,
thing, they go
progressive.
challenge.
We're gonna talk about progression and regression. So, yes, you can find one thing to work on, and there's no way you can progress one thing so that I mean, pros work on stuff all the time, right? So you can always challenge them more, right? Or you can even go backwards. That's a little bit tougher, called regression. But you can always progress something. So you're picking one thing, and whatever it is, you're sticking with that the whole lesson. Don't get waylaid. And certainly don't go to another stroke. Just stay with your stroke. And okay, so that's the primary diagnosis. You've gotten there by doing two things. You've observed and asked questions. What are the two things you do to get to your primary diagnosis? Observe and ask questions. What are the two things you need to do to get to your primary diagnosis? Observe and ask questions. This is what you don't do. Okay, guys, a good warm up. Today our lesson's on forehand. So let's all. This is how you hit a forehand. You hold it with an Easter forehand grip, and then you prepare like this. You don't teach until you've observed, right? That's why it's so important to do this diagnosis part. Don't do your demonstrations, your verbal instructions, your all that stuff until you've gotten a sense of, okay, this is what we'll work on, and then you get into all your demonstrations, your verbal, non-verbal, kinesthetic, whatever, all those things we'll talk about as we go on. But the observing is key at the outset. After that, there's no linear path. Your lesson, that's what the only thing I would say is linear in this thing is introduction, warm up, observe and ask questions. And then at the very end, wrap up, pick up the balls and do the homework. Those are the only things that are ordered. In between that 18 minutes of what you have to accomplish, it's all over the map. When you demonstrate, you're always up to do it. So, how does the lesson start? Lesson starts now. What's the first thing you're gonna do?
Intro, ask questions.
What is your intro?
My 3 things about me.
3 things about yourself. Then what are you gonna do?
Warm-ups.
Well, he did 3 things. He said 3 things about himself.
Then I'm gonna ask my group.
Yeah, that's 3 things about your student or students. Good. Cedric, then what are you gonna do?
Tell them warm up.
Warm up. There we go. Okay. Then what are we gonna do?
Start the lesson.
Yeah. And what does that look like?
Like a little bit of verbal thing, like
Observe and ask questions. You're gonna observe the stroke. So after the warm up, you gotta set up something to observe. All right. Whether it be if they're higher level, they can maybe do live wall. If they're not, you can feed to them. All right. Now here on the observe and ask questions part, it tends to work better if it's a full shot. So if you have a backhand, it's probably hard. Some people say, well, I did observe, I asked questions while they were doing mini tennis backhand. I'm like, well, that's kind of a limited space. You're not seeing the whole thing. So I would say, if you have a backhand ground stroke, maybe see them hit from the baseline, whether you have to feed it or not. Yeah.
German, just, hey, I'll give you 2 minutes to go short court, then hey, let's jump all the way back.
You can do that. That's fine. So maybe you do some kind of stretch or warm up, and it's like, why don't you do mini tennis for a little bit and then back up and let me feed you some balls. There's no right or wrong. There's no right or wrong. There's just that you need to not teach before you know what you're teaching. The analogy is for observing and asking questions that relates to this whole diagnosis thing is, who's got kids? Me? You don't have kids?
Another month. Another month.
Oh, no, oh, wow, congratulations. All right, so one of the worst things is when your babies, you get sick because you're scared to death, especially if you're a new parent. You take them to the doctor, the next morning, and they've had a fever and they've been whining, blah, blah, blah. And you say, hey, my baby, what does the doctor do? Oh, your baby's sick, here, let me write you a prescription. No, you get sued, right? So what does the doctor typically do? Even when you go in? Ask questions. How long had that fever? When did the fever start? What's the temperature? What hurts? And then what do? Observe how they delight. It's the same thing. You observe and ask questions before you make some kind of diagnosis, and that's the best analogy I can come up with. And how you do that, that's up. There's multiple ways to do it depending on your students and the stroke and all that stuff. Okay. So now they get to the bulk of the lesson. You've observed, you've come up with what? A primary diagnosis or a theme, and a group could be a very thematic thing. It could be a tactic. A private lesson could be a technical thing. It's just one thing you're gonna work on. And then you gotta do at least 3 drills. At least 3 drills to support your primary diagnosis. Does that make sense? What do I mean by that?
we got 20 minutes for 3
You
drills.
have 25 minutes for the entire lesson. So by the time you do the intro and wrap up and pick up, it's usually around 19, 20, 21 minutes, depending on how much you talk in the other parts. So let's say it's 18 minutes. Now you got at least 3 drills, and it's 6 minutes each. If you add 4 drills, the time goes pretty fast. Because remember, it's just part of the lesson. So let's say my primary diagnosis was, what did I say beforehand? Okay, contact point. So you're a little too late, so we're gonna work on a contact point. So I'm gonna do 3 drills. They all focus on the contact point. All right? Is that hard to do? No. You can pick 1,000 drills that focus on contact point if that's what you focus on. So now we'll talk about what do those drills look like. Well, they gotta be in some kind of progression. What does progression mean? What's the definition of progression?
Easiest to hardest.
That's right. Linear progression is easiest to hardest. Simple to more complicated, anything. Shorter to bigger. Slower to faster, that's progression. What's a regression?
Harder to easy.
Yeah, it goes harder to easier or more difficult to simpler, whatever. Backwards. Kind of backwards. Okay. So the best progressions are usually not the best. The least complicated to perform in a short environment is a linear progression, easiest to hardest. All right, so what does that look like? That could look like, I know Ginger likes to say, teach it, drill it, play it. Right? Is that what you like to do?
Yeah.
You thought I didn't remember that.
Yeah.
All right, so that's a very, very logical linear progression. My diagnosis was contact point, so I'm gonna close the environment so that I can teach it. What does close the environment look like in a tennis lesson? What does that mean? Closed environment, open environment,
Like maybe not a moving ball, maybe.
right? Making it simple.
Dead ball drill. or-
Dead ball drill, hand feed, anything that where you close. What's the most open environment in tennis, in a tennis lesson?
Rally.
Rally, okay. Live ball, go ahead. All right, you two go over there and hit. That's the most open. Okay, now you two go over there and hit and play to 11. That's a little bit more close. I just put one control. I add a score. Same thing. You two go over there and hit, play to 11. Somebody add a control to that. Close the environment more. You two go over there and hit, play to 11. Add a control.
Just cross court.
Just cross court. You two go over the head, play to 11, only cross court. Somebody add another control or another close to that. You two go over there and hit, play to 11, just cross court.
Slide service line.
So that's the service line. So now you're getting everything that you add as a coach is called a control, and it closes the environment. So if you want to teach it and you want to get the most closed environment, you don't have to, but let's say you want to get the most closed environment possible. What does that look like generally?
The drill.
The drill. What does the drill look like generally in the most closed environment in a tennis lesson?
Like shadow hitting.
Shadow hitting. That's very, they're not even hitting, there's no ball, right? Very, very closed environment. You're showing, okay, we're going to work on contact point. Let's do this. Let's freeze at contact. Okay, free, got that. Okay, let's add one component to open that up a little bit.
But that's
Add a
one
ball.
drill. Is that considered as one drill then?
No, that's not
Oh, okay.
That's just part of this. Huh? Yeah, so now I'm adding a drop feed. So what am I controlling as a coach?
The ball.
I'm controlling what? What are some of the things I'm controlling? Lots, but what, name one?
The contact.
Contact point.
You drop the word.
What else? The movement. Pretty much everything, right?
Timing.
Anything I want to control. If I'm this close dropping it, I can control. I can say, okay, now I don't want you to move at all. I just want you to swing. Now I want you to back up there and take one, whatever you want to control, you can control in that close. Also, your voice, your dynamics with your nonverbal. You can be real quiet, you can be real intimate, right? The further back you get, a little bit less control. Further back, less. Now, so distance is always a progression. Or we call those mini or micro progressions. It's not a drill, it's just a progression of within the drill. So let me address Andreas' point. I get this a lot because a lot of pros that have been doing it for a long time are stuck the way they did it a long time ago in their entire lesson for 20 minutes. Their basket's at the service line and they're feeding balls. And then, their feedback is, you didn't show a progression in your 3 drills. And then the feedback they give back to counteract, they say, yes, I did. First, they hit forehands cross court. And then they hit forehand down the line. That was my second progression. And then they hit forehands cross court and down the line. My third progression. It's like, that's not a progression. That's just hitting to different targets. It's the same drill, right? So what we're looking for, what we value is that you can progress a drill that looks completely different, but it's working on the same thing. So for example, I hand feed in a very closed environment. How can I do that drill working on contact point after they've got that, they've kind of mastered that, and I want to challenge them more?
You throw the ball.
I can throw it, I can add,
Go back
on the run.
on the run, I can add movement. I can make them move, I can still drop it. I can back up and toss it. I can go back and racket feed it. So you have to decide, but it has to look, a drill looks completely different, one drill to the next. So for example, drill 1, when you see the tester's note, it'll say drill 1, drop feed from the service line. Drill 2, toss feed to the baseline. Drill 3, racket feed from drill, and I always put like 3A, added movement. And that, to me, that's the same drill. Added 2 steps of movement. Those are little mini progressions within the same drill. But 3 drills are three actually where you've done something completely different as a pro, or they've done something completely different and you've stuck to your primary thing. And there's so many great drills and stuff, you could see them all week, to incorporate in your lesson. And it's so much more fun. God, I remember when I was a young pro and I was working all those hours on the court, I wasn't creative and I was just out there for the money. I didn't have the passion, it was just my job. I mean, literally, this is embarrassing, but I literally would feed balls and take balls and chuck them while they're hitting because I was looking forward to picking up the balls where I could go get a drink of water. I mean, it's just pathetic, but that's the truth. But the more I was like, wait, I can do this 10 different ways. And if I can get across to my student one way, I have another way to do it. And I was learning from that, and it's like, wow, this is actually a very dynamic business to be in. It's like, never stop learning different ways to work on stuff. And then you're never bored because you're always doing something new. This is boring. Oh, good shot, good shot. I hear all the time. The only verbal feedback they got was, great, that's the way I like it. Feed the ball, bottom of the net. Oh, great. Feed the ball, hits the back fist. Oh, great. I'm watching these lessons, I go, what's so great about that? God dang it. All right. So, let's take a little break. What do we got here? Oh, let's finish the lesson, not a little break. So after the 3 drills in progression, that's the bulk of the whole time, right? Then your tester, or a person watching you, will give you a sign. Actually, literally say, Jim. That's the only thing. They can't talk during the whole lesson. It's hard for me, but I just sit there and be quiet. Now, Jim, go like that, and then you shake your head. That means you have 5 minutes left. So you're usually on your last drill. Maybe it's a play it. Maybe you're doing a live ball or a semi-live ball, and you're playing some points out, focusing on your thing, your primary diagnosis. And then eventually you gotta say, okay, let's get the balls up. And then you gotta have all the balls up, and you gotta do your review, which incorporates reviewing the lessons, what are their takeaways, and then you have 2 kinds of homework. You have to give them something they can practice off the court, like give me some examples of what they can practice at home.
Hitting on the wall first.
Okay.
Since we'll stick with contact.
Yeah, they could hit on their garage wall, that's at home. They could
Look in the mirror and.
mirror, that's a good one. I love mirrors because you see it. They could video, they have someone video their strokes and watch it at
They'll
home.
watch something
They
on
could
YouTube.
watch YouTube videos are huge for tennis. That are specific on strokes. They can watch tennis on TV. They can practice shadow drills. There's a myriad of things you can do at home. But you can do it specific for that primary diagnosis. Don't just say, go home and watch YouTube videos. Go, hey, I want you to watch a YouTube video, and I want you to pause it each time you can on the contact point and see where it is in relationship to their body. That's a good homework for contact point. And then you got to give one kind of on-court homework. Okay, the next time you come out, Cedric, if you come a few minutes before you're playing your doubles match, and just take the ball and toss it out in front of you, move up, and try to hit that contact in front like we did on that 3rd drill, where you're moving forward and hit it there. Or toss it up high in the air and back up in ready position, and just do something on court that emphasize and actually demonstrate that. Demonstrate your on court homework. And then the lesson's over. Now, what works best, here's the thing, is you have to try to finish it right. I mean, timing is super important. Not so much, I don't think, in Las Vegas. Certainly not in California. So in my scenario, for 20 years, if I was running 2 minutes late, in my other lesson, we had a deck, they're up there, and I say, hey, Josh, I'm running a couple minutes late. Are you good to stay after a few minutes? And then again, no problem. All right, super laid back. Some scenarios are not laid back. What would some clubs and cultures? So what, right? Eastern. Right? Where do you think is not laid back in terms of timing of starting and stopping lessons?
Anywhere where you're indoor payment.
Indoor payment courts. And that, I'm literally, so Midtown Chicago, beautiful club. And it has prime time, private lesson, $110. Okay, that's pretty expensive, at least to me it is, I don't know to you guys. But here's the kicker, prime time court rental, $100 an hour. So if you take a private lesson at Midtown Chicago in prime time hours, you pay $210 freaking dollars. That's unbelievable. So anyways, they have a light. They have a green, yellow, red, literally. And when it hits, and so you have to be, so if you're a pro, I mean, you gotta maximize 60 minutes. That's almost $2. 1 minute's almost $2. It'd be $120, right? So that means that every minute has to count to be a good pro. But you also have to be off when when it hits red, because the next pro, he's on with his basket. He's gotta maximize his or her first minute, right? So that's why we say timing is of super value. Now, it may not be in your culture or wherever you are, but at least you have to learn it. You have to learn that. How do I time this lesson so that I finish correctly at the end? So I'm saying that some people do this. Okay, guys, we're doing a live ball, and there's balls all over the place. I got the 5-minute sign. Okay, we got time for 3 more points. Remember, we're working on that contact point, ready, and blah, blah, blah. Good. All right, guys, bring it in and do a great review. Okay, blah, blah, blah. Review contact point, hopefully, or whatever your lesson was. And then I give 2 things of homework. We're gonna watch this in the mirror. They're gonna go out with the ball machine on the court, and we're gonna, all right, great lesson, guys. If they're adults, what do they do as soon as that ends?
They go sit down.
Gone. And what are you left with?
All the balls.
All the balls. Sorry. So what tends to work best is, okay, hey, we have time for 2 more points. Finish the points. Hey, guys, let's pick up all the balls, and then it's not over yet. Let's meet back at the basket after the balls are up. And then you go get all the balls up, and then they meet, and then you can manage that last little bit, and you can make it carry on, or you can cut it off. All right? But you can do it however you want. There's nothing that says you have to do one. I'm just telling you what seems to work better. Adults seem to lead. For some reason, kids seem like, oh, I'll help them pick up balls. You get more selfish in life.
It's the opposite.
Yeah. All right. Good timing. Let's go with some questions right now. Yes, sir.
Oh, sorry. So you have to say the person's name, each one of them 5 or 6 times.
Yeah, so we have use of name, appropriate use of name. It's not a certain amount of time. That actually used to be on there. It used to count.
Yeah, it used to seem pretty like inorganic and.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But, you know, I will tell you this. If you, especially in the group lesson, if you've forgotten someone's name, it's super obvious. So if you remember, you know, if you've forgotten one of the, it's usually you forget one name, right? And then you just keep saying the other 3 a lot of times, and it becomes really awkward. So just ask again, hey, I forgot your name, and do some name association. Can you tell me again what your name is? It's not that big a deal, but it's just make them feel comfortable. You should know their name. Right?
So we don't need to keep track of how many times we say their name. Okay.
But you need to use it throughout.
So use it throughout.
Yeah, you definitely use it throughout. You don't want to say every time they hit the ball, nice shot, Jimmy, nice shot, Jimmy, nice shot, Jimmy. They'll be like, what the heck?
Yeah.
But
You're just gonna challenge.
at some point, you know, when you're talking specifically to Jim, you should say use the name. And that's what we're looking for, appropriate use of name. So you're gonna definitely learn it at the beginning, because you're gonna introduce yourself and get their name. And then, somewhere through the lesson, you should probably, I don't know, use a couple times. And maybe at the end when you say goodbye, but just appropriate use of name. That's a good question. But that's only worth 1 point. And you know how many people tell me, like, we used to have these levels of P1, P2, P3.
I didn't get P1 because I didn't only use the name once. Or something.
Yeah, I got that, and I was like, yeah, that's 1 point.
Yeah.
Names are 1 point, so that's not why you didn't get P1. That's a great, so. Other questions? Yeah.
Time analysis, watch phone.
Yeah, you can bring it. So you can bring it. So you'll have us that'll just, we can only tell you when there's 5 minutes left. So sometimes people say, hey Sid, how much time do I have left? And I just go like this. Because I'm not supposed to say anything until there's 5 minutes. I'm really not supposed to have interaction at all except to tell you there's 5 minutes left. Yes.
Do we have any tools, or we can bring tools?
Yeah, so typically you'll have a basket with some USPTA Wilson balls, Wilson #1 in tennis, and some, we like to have some cones and stuff on the basket, but no guarantees. So if you have your own props, especially if you live here, if you flew here, you probably did. But if you have stuff you want to bring that you use as aids, you know, that's fine. Now we do an adult, so we're not using transitional balls. Because obviously, which is not a bad thing to use if you have adult beginners, but we're just using regular yellow balls. Yeah.
Is this regression linear?
It could be anything, but it has to be in progression. So let's talk about regression. So regression is, actually, in my world of coaching, I use regression more on, which might sound counterintuitive, more on the highest level players. So for example, when I'm working with player development and pro players, so typically their warm-up is pretty intense live ball, you know, just getting a group where they're actually live ball rounding with each other. And that's usually 2 people, you know. And then if I have some specific that I'm working on, Cedric and we're working on, he's not getting enough load on his outside foot, you know, so his open stance forehand is just not having pop on it. So I'm like, let's work on getting a little more legs into it. So they'll rally, maybe they'll rally cross court, and then I might say, okay, I might close the environment and say, okay, over there, Ginger, she's the other pro over there. Okay, Cedric, I'm gonna toss you these 5. You know, I might do a toss feed with a pro player and let him just rip it cross court. Okay, Ginger, this one, play it out. Okay, now I toss feed, so he's done the feeling 5 times. That's called a regression. Because they've already played and they've already worked on this, and now I'm closing the environment, so I'm going backwards. And then I'm adding what I call a drop feed to a live ball. So, okay, now I want you to hit this drop feed, and that starts the rally. And then Ginger's over there doing, you know, hitting the ball. Does that make sense? So it's going backwards. It's more simple. But in your lessons tomorrow, be safe.
Don't do it.
Just go linear. Just go simple to harder, closer to further. That's the best. You know, then you know you nailed it. But just so you know, regression is a very important part of coaching. But in a 25-minute scenario, probably you might not have time anyway. That's a good question. So go simpler to harder. Do some sort of observation and questioning, and that could be in an open environment, or it could be somewhat closed where you're feeding, but you want to see full strokes, right? You probably don't want to do toss feed from the service line while I get my primary diagnosis of your backhand. You know, that's a pretty closed environment to see what issues they might have. Maybe I'm going to feed the ball, and maybe they're nailing every shot. Well, now I'm going to feed the ball with topspin. Oh, they're nailing every shot. Now I'm going to feed the ball with underspin. And then in the meantime, I'm asking, which ones give you the most trouble? Which was most successful? I'm trying to come up with something that will help them. You look confused.
I'm soaking you in.
Oh, I know. All right, good question. Other questions? Keep coming. Yep.
So as one of your 3 drills, would something as base, if you're working a contact point, if you were just gonna, like, say, stand near the net and just have people.
Yeah, that's good.
hit the net, that's
That's a good drill. I'd write that drill 1, and I love that because that's kinesthetic learning. So drill 1, students at net. But what happens is a lot of people do a really cool drill so briefly that I don't think their students, especially the kinesthetic ones, they're like, keep that going. At least let them do it 10 times or something. They'll do like 2 hits on the net. I'm like, oh, they're finally getting the feel. They're like, okay, let's go to the next thing. Like they're rushed to get past that. If you have a cool tip or drill that's like that, you know, I would say at least let them get, you know, at least take a minute, you know, especially if it's a group, or 10 reps. I think that we tend to, what do I mean by kinesthetic? All right, let me back up. There's actually 4 types of way adults learn, but we focus mostly on 3 in tennis lessons. What are they? 3 types of way adult learners, and kids too, but learn in the tennis lessons.
Tactile.
So that's where they're feeling it. So kinesthetic, or touch, or feel. What's the other 2? Verbal. Visual. Okay, which are tennis pros in general, if you're in my shoes who watch a lot of tennis pros, or Ginger, where we watch a lot of tennis pros teaching, which one do you think the tennis pros are most prolific at? Verbal. And of the 3, scientifically speaking, that's the least absorbed.
That's why they have the yellow all the time.
Right. So verbal is good. It's that people learn verbally, but it's of those 3, kinesthetic, verbal, and visual. Statistically, verbal is the way learning is observed the least, and that's the way we teach the most. So right now, all this has been a lot of verbal. So you're probably absorbing less than when we go upstairs and you're actually doing. Right? So the combination of verbal and visual and tactile is what really works best for learning. So that's why we're doing a lot of verbal here. Now we're going to go upstairs and you're going to actually do it. And you're going to see other people do it. And so we're trying to combine, that's what you try to do as a teaching pro. You try to combine visual and tactile, or visual, kinesthetic, and verbal. And kinesthetic, what Jim was saying, was its contact point, and he's got a tip or a drill where we're gonna go up and hit the net, or the coach's eye, Billie Jean coach's eye. That's very tactile learning for contact point or spin, right? They're feeling it actually happen. That's the least used, by the way. Kinesthetic learning for teaching pros is used the least. Verbal is used the most, demonstration, visual is used the second most, and then kinesthetic is used the third most. And if you could use more of that. So what are some kinesthetic learning for? Let's say you're working on a forehand volley, and it's 3-0 players. So first of all, what's a common error for a 3-0 player hitting a volley? They break their wrist. A bad grip, one, good. Okay, so let's say they break their wrist. So what's a tactile or kinesthetic type of drill you could do for if they're breaking their wrists?
You get the tennis can and have them.
Oh, good. Catch the ball. Yeah, good.
Sometimes just having them like, come over here.
Yes, sir.
Like have your handle like go under my hand, like
Yeah.
push against my hand.
Okay,
Make
good.
it feel like-
So they feel how it's laid back, and that's how it should feel when they hit. That's good.
Or just crash rackets with somebody else.
Yeah. Except for Wilson, you keep them pretty. No more than 10.
Sorry about that.
If you have a Babolat and you smash it all you want. Go to the brick wall.
Looks
Kinesthetic learning. Okay. All right, let's walk through it again. Verbal walkthrough. Oh, there's a section of points called demonstration that has like all these, that has like A through G, I think. It has like grip, stance, footwork, contact point, follow through, toss, a bunch of the demonstration. Because when should you demonstrate? When should you visually demonstrate a stroke during your lessons?
After the warm-up.
After the warm-up? What else?
After the observation.
After the observation?
Observation, sorry.
Yeah.
Them warming up.
Yeah.
They're
What else?
getting warm up.
When should you be visually demonstrating your stroke throughout during the tennis lesson? Before the drill? You definitely should demonstrate before the drill. Before each drill. You should definitely demonstrate before each drill.
Again in the wrap up.
You should demonstrate it in the wrap-up. What else?
After they do it wrong.
You should demonstrate it when you're demonstrating corrections. What else?
Sounds like all the time.
All the time. That's the perfect answer. Throughout your lesson, you're demonstrating. Throughout your lesson, you're demonstrating. You're verbalizing, you're demonstrating. So let's say we're doing the forehand volley and we're working on this, right? And now the next drill is I'm gonna have them, I'm on their side of the net, and they're coming from a cone and they're moving up, and I'm tossing the ball, and I want them to make a forehand volley contact without breaking their wrist, right? And then they're gonna run around and get this. So one ball drill quick, I got the basket here, dunk, 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 and then he comes by, you break wrist. Okay, go. Right? So that took 5 seconds. Right? But he just went up, broke his wrist, and I just stopped it for a second. Hey, no words at all. So that's demonstrating. So throughout the lesson, you're demonstrating. It's not always, okay, everybody line up behind me. That's how I learn. Get in line back there. That doesn't work. I mean, that's okay, right? There's nothing wrong with that, but that's just one way to do it. All right, so you get all those things checked off if you did that whole demonstration. And you can't over demonstrate, but you can certainly under demonstrate. All right, you can certainly not demonstrate enough. But I can't think of a lesson. You can talk too much, and you can have students not hit enough balls, but because you're always talking and demonstrating. That's a big. But you can demonstrate quickly in parts of stuff. You don't have to demonstrate the whole stroke all the time. But certainly before each drill, you should demonstrate what to do. And we'll practice that today. You should demonstrate what you want your students to do. You should actually physically demonstrate. So they know exactly what the syntax of the drill, where do you want them to go, hit it, move. Where do you want to go after they hit it? You should do it because they're learning from that. Great questions. Other ones? Yes?
You see something so obviously wrong, but it's not part of the one thing. Okay, to quickly mention, hey,
Yes.
you gotta step into that ball.
Okay,
as much
so-
as we're working on contact, give me a step in before you hit that ball.
That's great. That's a great comment. So, primary diagnosis is what your focus is on. any stroke, everything's related, right? Your stance is related to your contact point is related to your preparation. I mean, it's all related, it's a stroke, right? So something that's obviously wrong, that's outside of just the contact point, is still related to the contact point, right? So you address it as that. So what was it, not stepping in?
Yeah, they're so far open, their right foot's coming forward on
All right,
the
so,
forehand.
hey, remember we want that contact point in front. Why don't you try stepping forward into the ball so you can hit the contact point? You can always relate it to it. And there's no wrong with just saying, hey, step into the ball. Step into the ball now, step into the ball. And then tie it back to contact. What you don't want to do is go, so that at the end of the lesson, if you've done a good lesson, you should be able to ask your group, Josh, what's the main thing we worked on? They should be able to spit it out like that. And if it's 15 words, and then that's too much, right? They should be able to say, the main thing we worked on was topspin, because they already know the stroke. The main thing we worked on was early preparation, if it's technical. So it could be tactical. For groups could be more tactical, because it's hard to pick something for everyone to work on that's technical, right? So if it's too big a backswing was the main thing that Ginger had wrong with her forehand, and then you had a follow through that you kept swinging down like that. This was during the observation question, all right? And you know, I don't know, everybody had something different wrong. It's hard to find technical to all work on. Now you can, but you may not be addressing their primary thing, but you still want to work on one thing. That's a good diagnosis. But it's easy to say, okay, we're all going to work on hitting it depth on the court. We're all going to hit it nice and high over the net with topspin, and then I'm going to give you tips on how to do it. So now your contact point low during the closed environment, I'll be saying, hey, swing up and over. And it's not going to hurt Ginger to see the correction of working on you all together. What you don't want to do is do a lesson for you. Okay, so now on our forehand, remember you're a little bit late, so you're going to work on a contact point in front. Okay, good. Now your forehand, your backswing is too big, so let's shorten the loop. And for your forehand, what we're going to work on is stepping into the ball. Well, those are mini private lessons. Those don't work for groups, right? You got to find something the whole group works on together, and you can address things individually with feeds and demonstrations. Anything to say about that, Ginger?
Common thread diagnosis, you know, like, oftentimes footwork would be a great thing to work on, or, you know, like Sid was saying, you know, find one thing that everybody can work on. And the last thing that I want to say, I'll just throw it in, you know, tennis pros tend to love to talk a ton. Like you said, when you're hitting balls to people and you've given them the feedback and you've given them the one thing to work on, make sure that you emphasize it, but let them hit a few balls and don't always be the white noise in the background. Because sometimes they need to think about what they're doing too. So you don't need to prove all the time that you can say, oh, you know, I've got 9 million things to show you guys. It's actually kind of good to back off a little bit, okay? And if you say good shot, say why. Say, that's a great shot because you hit it out in front. I saw that contact in front. Thanks.
And sometimes I think when you decide, if you are someone who talks some, sometimes it's really big to say, hey, I'm not gonna say anything. Everyone's going 10 times through and I'm not.
Yeah, that's cool.
Right.
Nobody's saying anything for 10 times
Right.
through. And then it's amazing how good
That's right.
they all do, right?
Yeah.
That's a cool tip. I love it. I see
And
that.
I
I don't do that.
But sometimes when you do, you're like, damn. And the kids aren't talking for once in line. And they did.
That's cool. Other comments, group or private? All right. In preparation for tomorrow. So by the end of today, I'm gonna be able to tell you, okay, I'm gonna give you a tentative time. So Dylan, I got you down for 8:30 private lesson, 11:30 group lesson. So you'll have kind of an idea, but also if you're there and around and we're short students, you just help each other out by being around and available. And then we may have to change the schedule, does it ever rain here? Maybe it rains, I don't know. Or maybe someone doesn't show up, or maybe some of the students don't show up. But everybody's gonna do a group and a private lesson, and then before we end, so everybody's gonna stick around to the end, And then we're gonna do another on-court education, which is kind of like what's going on in the conference, but you're gonna participate in it together. Because really, the association, what the USPTA is all about is
Education.
learning together. That's right, education. So I want you to get the sense tomorrow, even though you're given these lessons, I'm get to be the one that's learning and your student gets to be the ones learning. Now, you also learn when you teach and if you watch in others. But at the end, we're gonna do another educational module. It's not gonna take long, 45 minutes. And then we'll take a group picture and stuff and then you'll be done. So what you can do in preparation this evening is just consider, what if I get an overhead lesson for a group? What if I get a serve lesson for a private? And you can come up, at least in your mind, you won't know the level or the primary diagnosis, but you can still kind of, what's a structure I can use? What's a teach it, drill it, play it progression I could use?
Right.
What's a linear, what could I use? And you might have to do a 180, because that they'd have nothing, that had nothing to do with what your diagnosis is, but at least you have sort of in mind, people sometimes get thrown off by these overhead lessons. And they get picked a lot, especially students who come and do like a bunch of lessons in a row. The first lesson, they usually start off, what would you like to work on? Oh, forehand, next one backhand. And eventually they're like, I guess I'll try overhead. And then no one knows how to give an overhead lesson that's not super boring. Like, there's so many fun overhead drills and progressions and how you can break down the overhead. You can work on the one that bounces, and then the one that you hit in the air, then the one that you have to move back for. But I can't tell you how many times I've seen people do overhead lessons. I'm like, have you never worked on overhead? Where the drill starts with the person moving forward and then hitting over. I'm like, when does that even happen? When do you actually run forward from the baseline to hit an overhead? I mean, I don't know. It's always, at some point it's always stagnant or moving back. So have them start in a volley position and move to an overhead. Now maybe you have to move forward for a short lob, but it's not starting on the baseline. Like, how is that even, is that like some book I haven't read or something? So have an idea, that's what I mean. Like, think, what if I have an overhead lesson? What are 3 distinct drills? Can I do a toss feed? Sure. Can I work on contact point? Where they're just reaching up and maybe I stop at contact and then I back up and, add a little bit of follow through and then whatever. So that's something that you could practice or think about tonight.
One more thing, sorry. Go ahead.
Okay to tell them the 3 drills you're gonna do before. Hey, this overhead lesson, we're gonna do the first thing. We're gonna do a nice visual. I'm gonna put my racket up. They're gonna hit it. Then we're gonna do neutral overheads. Then let's work on our moving back. Can we tell them that before?
You could, if you think it'll work. I would think, what's that benefit of them knowing all 3 ahead of time? If you think it's a benefit, it would work. I would think it might lose focus of what you're doing.
Yeah.
I don't know. Too much information is harder to learn. That's why we try to work on one thing, and inevitably you correct other things, like you're saying. Inevitably, if your diagnosis was what we said was contact point, and their issues that keep falling back. Well, if you work on contact point enough in front, you're probably going to get a little bit of step into it. So they're all kind of related. I tend to think, given the whole 3 drills, it might work. I've seen it work before. We're gonna do this, this, and this. What you need to do, the best plan. There's one of the 40-point things is plan stated with students' buy-in. I forget what the word is, but that means, hey, you come up with your diagnosis. Okay, what we're gonna work on is, hey, forehand volley. We got these big swings. All right. So for the next 3 drills, we're gonna work on shortening our backswing, right? And what are we gonna work on for the next 3 drills? You ask them, they can say, is that okay? Does that sound something that's gonna help your volleys? If you ask that question related to your primary diagnosis, 100% of the time, people that have asked that question, I've never seen the students say no. Like, hey, we're gonna work on your contact point so that you're more consistent. Does that sound good? Every time they say yes. I've never seen them, no, I don't want to do that. But they also, now they've bought in, just by you asking them, this is what I come up with, I think this is gonna be helpful. Is that good with you guys? The group's like, yeah, that was good. They don't know. But then they realize, hey, I've just bought into something. And then you start this group dynamic, right? But they've all bought in together and they know what it is because what are we working on? We're working on a slice. Why? I don't know, because they play doubles and they come in a lot, whatever diagnosis you got to. Okay, for our backhands, remember, you guys, I asked you a bunch of questions, you all said you wanted to learn that slice because you want to come in for double. So when we're working on our backhand, the primary theme is slice. You guys good with that? All right? Yeah, see, no one ever said no. Did you say no? No. All right, so now they know, they bought in. That's how group dynamic starts. And now we're like, okay, we're gonna toss feed, start with your racket up, whatever, work on the slice, so that's a tactical singular diagnosis. Okay, yeah.
One more.
Yeah, keep going.
Friendly criticism. Hey man, if you could just get this contact when you go from a 2 to a 10 overnight.
There you go. You
No?
are. Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
There's
So
no
you
right
could-
or wrong, man.
You could say, hey man, that contact's killing you. We gotta get that out in front.
Killing you. You can say, yo, you suck. You want to get better.
You can't
If
say
it works, you probably can't say that. But when I say be you, be you.
Who's graded, you or Hassan?
Huh?
Who's graded, you or Hassan?
I don't know.
Alright.
It depends.
I'll find the right words to say.
There you go.
Sometimes in group lessons, you guys, you'll find that you have one person that's trying to monopolize or asking a million questions. If you wanna stay focused, make sure you kind of nip that in the bud right at the beginning and say, hey, Susie, that's a great point. Let's address that at the end because I wanna stay focused on this. That's kind of a way to shut it down a little bit, otherwise you're taking time away from everybody else.
That's good, yeah. Bring it back to that primary thing. And when you have a group, and that's where the experience comes in. Remember, there's no substitute for experience. When you have a group, you might have someone who's a dominating personality that wants to waylay the lesson, wants to work on their own thing. And that's where your experience as a pro comes in. Can you deal with that? We can't work on that in one day, right? But we can certainly work on the structure of the lessons and what we value is good. What we think we value is good for the lesson. Okay, other questions? Should we move on here? What do we got? Let's go. That was perfect, it's 12 o'clock. Let's take a break. Go eat some very affordable food here.
Which is not existing.
Yeah, that's right. So, does everybody know where the tennis courts are?
Yeah.
Okay, level 3, says spa and pool, walk toward the back. If you head to the main tennis courts where there's 4 lighted courts, we're not using those, that's where we have a tournament going on there. If you come out of the elevator and you turn immediately to your left, there's 2 kind of beat up courts, that's where we're gonna be. We're blue collar, baby. So let's meet there is 45 minutes okay?
Yeah.
12:45 on the tennis courts. Take all your stuff from here, we'll shut this thing